Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Now, I always encourage feedback from listeners, whether it be good or bad, and I did have a comment from someone calling themselves the Nostradamus Effect on YouTube yesterday about yesterday's interview with IOHK. He said, "I hope the final release will be better than the microphone that your guest used." Seriously, anyone understand what he's saying? So just to answer that question, I think the guest was using a conference speaker, which I must admit did not provide the best audio quality or enable me to tidy it up. I mean, I did my best that I could with that audio, but I do apologise for that. And I think this is also something that podcast courses or best microphone lists seldom teach you on the internet. Because you could go out and buy a $500 microphone, you could soundproof your room, and be safe in the knowledge you've got the best possible environment to launch your own podcast. But sadly, you cannot control the technology that your guests use. And I must admit, after 700 episodes I've recorded now, I think this is only the third or fourth time something like this has happened. So on average, we're doing okay, but apologies to anyone that felt if it did hinder yesterday's conversation or the quality of the show. But have no fears, you've got none of that to worry about today, because we've got Sam Riley, the CEO of Ansarada, on the show. And Ansarada is a company helping PE and VC firms, large corporations, small companies, their advisors and everything in between manage their business critical events such as IPOs and merger and acquisitions, funding, property management, etc. And Ansarada has over 35 million in revenue and harnesses the power of artificial intelligence to apply data and learnings over 20k deals taking place on its platform to predict the outcome of deals. And they're also working with big names such as Google, JP Morgan, Deloitte, Minister Ellison, Sony, Pivotal, and so many other big names. However, as many of you know, I do get frustrated with the modern way of judging everyone by their success right now, because everyone wants to be Ed Sheeran, LeBron, or Beyonce, as Gary Vaynerchuk always says. Very seldom do we hear about those 10 years of getting up at 5 a.m. every morning with little or no reward and nothing but challenges to overcome. This is where the real value is, and this is where the winning is done. And Sam from Ansarada is a born entrepreneur, and he started out by buying and selling light bulbs for just a small profit to his neighbours at age only 7. And then he progressed to organising neighbourhood car washes as a teenager in Australia's Blue Mountains. And from there he began bootstrapping Ansarada from the ground up to the 200 plus person international company that it is today. It really is a fantastic story that, yes, has got technology, but it captures the entrepreneurial spirit of what I try and bring to this show. So if you're a startup founder or whatever you're doing in life and you enjoy learning from other people's stories and other people's challenges, buckle up and hold on tight, because today I'm going to beam your ears all the way to Australia so we can speak with Sam Riley from Ansarada. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Sam. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name's Sam Riley. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of a company called Ansarada. And the name Ansarada, there's another 3 co-founders, and there's Andrew, Sam, Rachel and Daphne. So it's our first 2 letters. And we run a B2B SaaS platform company, and we've been running a business for 12 years, and we help people prepare for and execute critical events like mergers and acquisitions or raising capital. But over the last couple of years we've expanded on that and sort of innovated a lot and sort of help businesses be aware of some of those risks and opportunities that they discover during an M&A deal and during a cap raise, but rather than discover it then and kind of react to it, they can get on the front foot and use that knowledge and insight to improve their business today and perform better and win.
And you've been on an incredible journey. I mean, you built Ansarada from the ground up to a 200 plus person international company that it is today. But before we delve into that and the technology that you're leveraging to make it a success, I want to spend just a few minutes on your inspirational backstory, because you are a born entrepreneur. So can you tell me a little bit more about your journey that began by buying and selling light bulbs for small profit to your neighbours at the age of only 7, to organising neighbourhood car washes as a teenager in Australia's Blue Mountains, to actually bootstrapping Ansarada from the ground up to that company that it is today? I mean, because it's a fantastic startup story, isn't it, for anybody listening, and the hustle that you've got there. It reminds me of Gary Vaynerchuk, where he always talks about selling baseball cards at car boots, and something that he still does today.
Yeah, well, it's funny, however, if you're born a certain way and you've been gifted with certain skills or talents, you only know yourself as how you are, and then other people think that's really amazing. Like, my daughter is phenomenal in her music ability and playing the piano, and I can't even play like a triangle in time. So, I'm really amazed at that, because I just have no gifting there at all. But yes, I remember my mother tells stories about when I was in kindergarten, and they gave us a simple commerce exercise where, you had to buy some lollies for 50 cents and then sell a bag of them for $1. And no one in the class could do it, because the kindergarten kids, $1 was a lot of money then, and no one wanted to pay it. But what I did was open the bag, and there were 10 lollies, and I sold them for 10 cents each. And, people could afford 10 cents, and I ended up selling them anyway, and I was the only person that did that. So I don't know, I just always, if there was a barrier, I just thought, well, what could be done here? And so I did stuff like that. And my father ran his own business for all of my life, that growing up around that. And I think, one of the things that influences us is our father's effect on us. And, I remember I never really got much praise from Dad, except if you were doing something to do with the business. So it was kind of like, to get Dad's attention and recognition, if you helped him balance his general ledger, or did some cash reconciliations, or helped with some banking, or just something with the business, or anything, you learnt that that's where recognition and praise comes from. So I think maybe subconsciously that influences some of your thinking and behaviour. But yeah, Dad would be shopping at some, not the equivalent of Costco or something like that in today's world, but buying something in bulk. And I saw these light globes that were for sale there, but you had to buy the whole pallet almost, and it was like 500 of them. And so I paid for most of it, borrowed a bit of money from Dad, and then I think they were around 50 cents each or something. And then I just went door to door, and my pitch was, hey, I'm selling light globes, they're $1 each, how many do you want? And if a 7-year-old kid turns up on your doorstep like that, I'm like, no one said no. They took at least one or two. And my thinking was, everyone needs light globes, it's common. And, it just took 2 days to get rid of the whole lot. And I'm like, wow, you turned $500 into $1,000 pretty quick, paid back Dad, and just kept doing that. And just enabled car wash, started washing the cars. And then I thought, how do you expand this? And it's like, you've got to sign up more business, and then you reach a capacity level where you can't wash as many cars that you signed up. So I started recruiting friends, and, they'd get $8 for washing the car. I'd keep $2 for organising the business, and, tried to put people on subscription plans to have their car washed every 6 weeks, or, whatever. Like, all of these things, you start them off because you can see an opportunity to deliver some value to someone and create a bit of money. But then as they grow, it's funny, looking back on all that, anything that grows, it starts to place other demands on you, and it calls for other skills to be developed around communication or people management or setting expectations or inventory or, all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, I've got a lot more stories, but that's sort of me growing up. But I think what solidified stuff for me around where I focus and how I think on that is, listening to a guy, Jim Rowan, speak when I was age 14, and he said, you get paid for the value you bring to the marketplace. If you want to get paid more, you've got to bring more value. And that really appealed to me, and it's kind of the centerpiece of how how I think. It's also how we started Ansarada and reinvented Ansarada and keep growing it. Is what would be valuable to people? You know, how could we serve them? Like, what's something that's stressful that we could remove for them? What's risks that they're taking? What's costing them money? Like, or what are their hopes and dreams that they want to have realised? Like, so how do we create value for people and serve others? And the more people that you can serve and the more value you create for them, you then become valuable, and you don't sort of have to worry about the money side of it, because people will pay you for that, what you're creating for them and the service you're delivering.
And it's a great story and so important to hear as well, because I think we, especially now, we only often hear or get to hear about the overnight success stories of startups and judge people by the success that they're having right now. But as we both know, these kind of overnight success stories usually consist of 10 years of blood, sweat and tears. And it's fair to say that your life hasn't always been incredibly easy either. So can you tell me a little bit more about how finding out that your father was, I think he was operating under a false building licence, and the brave steps that you made to put integrity and trust at the forefront of your business as a result of that experience? Because again, it's quite moulding and shapes you as a person, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. You know, it's quite amazing. I remember reading, because I read a lot, and I remember reading that it takes 10 years to be an overnight success, and you'd read people's biographies or interviews on that, and sort of now that we've got to that stage where I'm going, yeah, it makes absolute sense, and it's so true, that statement.
Yeah.
You know, so if anyone's listening and they're in that year 6 or 7 and, you know, you haven't experienced that success, or maybe you are successful but you're just not recognised, you know, I just encourage you that, you know, those things come along with persistence and consistency. Yeah, it was interesting, you know, like I was sitting on my front lawn and, Dad was funny. He had a glass and glazing business and he wanted to expand into building, like, as in, you know, not major construction, but putting like extensions to verandas for people, you know, maybe another story, like, you know, renovation stuff. And he wanted to just add that on. But rather than sort of do it properly, he found a dodgy sort of builder who said, oh, look, if you use my license and name and sign it off, and I get a percentage of the revenue, or what, I don't know what their arrangement was, but some percentage of something, that's fine, you know. So what was bad about that is that, you know, I'd want to follow Dad around at night when he was giving someone a quotation or something, and but he'd say, oh, look, you know, the name's not Riley here, the name's Werner. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, last name's Riley. It's like, well, not here. And, you know, you see, you know, it's kind of really conflicting when your parents say, look, oh, you shouldn't lie, but then, you know, the action is completely the opposite. And it's like, so there's a bit of conflict there, and I still have a lot of respect for Dad, but that was when I was about 13. But by age about 16, you know, this had become pretty bad, and also he had a lot of business trouble that he wasn't dealing with. And, you know, I was in that sort of, I think, rebellious, angry teenage boy stage at 16, and none of this was being dealt with. And anyway, and Dad was technically bankrupt, and my family was under a lot of financial stress. And I was on my front lawn one day, and saw this film crew walking up the street, and I'm like, oh, I recognise that face. And then he got closer, and he put his hand out, and he said, you know, I'm Jeff McMullen from 60 Minutes, and you know, I said, oh yeah, and I knew exactly why they were here and all that, and it was just something in me that went, look, you know, actually one of my biggest values is my faith, and I'm a Christian, and I'm just like, well, the truth will set you free. You know, it's never good not to deal with the truth, and I was just trapped in being part of this lie for so long that I'm like, you know, this is the truth time, you know. And so I said, oh yeah, I know who you're here for, and I walked up to the front door and let them in, and I said, oh, Dad, you've got some visitors. And you know, and he did the typical thing that you always see, you know, on these shows. He ran away and he jumped in his car and just went to drive off and wouldn't talk to them and just sort of left. But as he was doing all that, I said, Dad, why don't you just come clean and tell them the truth? You know, and they're getting all this interaction between me and him on camera. And when he took off, you know, they were just left there with me, and they asked me a few questions and stuff, and they were pretty good. They said, look, we'd love to show you and what just happened there on TV, but, you know, we don't have to. But, like, it's, you know, obviously pretty compelling, but, you know, what do you think of that? And I was very adamant. I said, yeah, show it. I said, I don't care, because I was really just over it, you know. And anyway, that happened, but, you know, as you know, they start previewing 60 Minutes during the week for what's going to be shown on TV that Sunday, and it would be like, you know, this week on 60 Minutes, and an evil man, and then they have shots of my dad doing something dodgy, and then it's like, now even his own son wants him to come clean, and you know, I'm then at school, and you know, I've got like I've got next to zero support from anyone, because everyone took the view that, oh, you know, blood's thicker than water. Why would you do that to your father? And, you know, you must be so disciplined, blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. And, you know, my mother did absolutely the right thing at the time in sort of preserving the family and sort of, you know, trying to pursue love and forgiveness and that stuff. But like I said, I was the angry teenage boy at age 16, and it became super uncomfortable in the house. So I left, you know, so I moved out of home when I was 16, and, you know, then had to deal with all of that stuff. You know, so I was living in this $45 a week, you know, one bedroom little dilapidated lodging thing, and had to travel an hour every day to school and an hour back, and, you know, just thrust into that sort of world. But I'm pretty resourceful, and I learn a lot from that, and I think I value that experience so highly now. But at the time, it was a very lonely, dark place, and you asked another question that I'm giving you a very long answer on. But one of the values I have, and Ansarada has, is in the culture here is, you know, just like, people call it radical candor now, and they, you know, there's all books on this stuff, but it's just about transparency, and it's about, you know, it's about the truth. And I think that value's like so strong in me, almost like a traumatic experience where, because Dad didn't deal with his problems when they were small, and he covered them up and swept them under the rug for years and years and years, when the 60 Minutes type event happens, or when the financial difficulties are so big and they come out too late, they're not solvable. Like, there's too much too wrong for too long, and you don't have enough time to actually repair it or fix it. And I always think, like, everyone does things bad, you know, like everyone messes up, we all make mistakes, but, you know, let's know about them transparently when they're small and early, because that way we can, you know, deal with it, we can respond, we can recover, we can fix. You know, we've only gone off course by 100 yards. We haven't gone off course by 100 miles. You know, so I sort of have that, I have to have transparency. I'm not ever going to be in that position again where there's too much too late, can't fix it, game over, everyone suffers, everyone has pain. I'm like, that's not going to happen to me again. So that experience leads to that sort of value creation that I think founders bring with them into the environments that they create. And usually there's a story like the one I just told that goes with it. And I think I'm quite transparent about the story, because I want my team to understand, where does that come from? Where's the intent behind that? And why is that such a strong cultural value here?
And did you ever make up with your dad after that event?
Yes, I did. You know, we did. And, you know, we reconciled and had quite a good relationship. And, you know, he passed away like a week before my first daughter was born. But yeah, we did have a good relationship. And I've said this to my leadership team, you know, the funny thing is with fathers, because we seek the approval and the love and acceptance of our fathers so much, that even though I know, like, he's no longer here, one of the reasons I sometimes reflect on myself, I'm like, why do we keep pushing to do more with Ansarada? Or why do we keep taking on these challenges and growing our business and doing more sophisticated things? And it's like, well, sometimes you just think, well, Dad used to value that, so maybe if he was still alive, he'd say he was proud of you. maybe he'd say he loved you, or, you know, because that was the thing that you knew that he cared about, you know. So even though you can reconcile that, it's still a big driver for you, you know, as a person.
Absolutely, and I'm sure he's incredibly proud because here in 2018, Ansarada has over 35 million in revenue and harnesses the power of artificial intelligence to apply data, and learnings over 20k deals have taken place on its platform to predict the outcome of deals. But can you set the scene and help listeners visualise what kind of problems you solve with Ansarada, the role of technology, and what makes it unique from other solutions out there?
Okay, well, yeah, it is interesting. Like our core business we started with, the three of the four of us got together because the due diligence process in a, you know, when people are doing due diligence in a merger or acquisition, selling their business, maybe an investor wants to put capital into something, but they want to do due diligence. In 2005, you know, it was really, you know, the start of the what's called now a virtual data room. And what was around at the time was pretty expensive and very, you know, not that sophisticated. So, you know, Andrew, who's like our technical co-founder, he's a Russian software engineer, great guy, you know, works in the business still to this day. He's like tremendously valuable. He built something quite rudimentary for an asset sale that he was a part of. And Rachel, who was my sister, was an auditor and worked in transaction services at KPMG, and she was part of that transaction and part of getting that company through that due diligence and through the sale process. And you know, Rachel didn't want to end up being a partner at KPMG and go on all that career path. And you know, Andrew had just watched someone. You know, he built a lot of tech at a company and he was an employee, but he watched that person walk away with, you know, over $100 million after the sale. And so Andrew was, you know, curious at that stage of his career to perhaps have his own venture and have some ownership and sort of take a step up beyond that employee level into higher responsibility. So that we said, oh, let's do this. And you've got an accountant, and Daphne, the other co-founder, she's an accountant. So they had a Russian software engineer, two accountants. They're like, we need an entrepreneur, someone who's creative, someone who can market and sell and strategize. And Rachel goes, yeah, actually, I'll call my brother because he's looking for an opportunity. And at the time, you know, I was literally making ice creams for Unilever and part-time and trying to start another enterprise. I had a 2-year-old daughter. I was technically on paper bankrupt because I had a juice bar business with a friend that failed and a few other stupid things. But, you know, so I'm like, yes, I need something like this to work. And, you know, I met up with them, saw the problem. I'm like, gee, there's a lot on the line here. These are companies that this is a big event for them. They're running their company whilst they're selling it. You know, sometimes the person that wants to buy their company is their closest competitor. So how do you show them this information but still control it and have, you know, all that? The advisors that they use, that, you know, they charge them like hundreds of dollars per hour. Like, you know, gee, it must be a stack. Like, going back to what I said before, there must be a lot of value that we could create here. You know, surely we could reduce risk. Surely we could help with efficiency and that and the productivity. So that's what we did for years. And we still do that, you know. So if you want to execute due diligence on our platform, it's like, you know, been built and refined for years and years and years. It's like phenomenally good. So that's, but towards, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we realised that we were working with people at the end of their business life cycle predominantly. Like, people use us for the due diligence process in a tender and other use cases, but people selling their business, particularly mid-market small businesses or large, you know, 20 million to a couple of hundred, it's such a big outcome thing. And that we were working with them at the end of that life cycle. And we're like, and due diligence is really just a really, really good risk and opportunity assessment. You know, that's why a buyer does it. That's why a bidder that may sit there. And companies, when they're going through that, they actually discover a lot about these risks and opportunities. And they react to them, and they learn how to articulate and present themselves and express their value really well, better than they ever have. And, you know, at the end of the deal, every company is in its best shape ever. And I kind of got obsessed with that as being stupid and thought, what a waste that companies are in their best shape ever. They have the most knowledge and the most intimate knowledge and actionable knowledge on their risks in their business and the opportunities to improve their performance at the end of their life cycle. So then that just started a question around how could we help businesses be aware of these things earlier? You know, how could they know these things and act on them? How could the cost and time and stress that's associated with due diligence, that process, how could that process be a state? You know, how could it be automated? How could you unlock some of this in a much cheaper, easier, faster way? And that question led us to go, well, we've run 25,000 of these deals. There must be some patterns in the data we have. You know, like what documents and information and metrics are valued by which people, and you know, what is the outcome on a deal? Where do people start, and what do they typically have to edit and amend, and what questions do they get asked, and what answers do they give? So it would have been great if we had this philosophy at the start of our business, but it only occurred to us about 8 or 9 years in, and we're like, we've got all the data, but it's completely unstructured. You know, it's like, you know, we've run these deals, but we're like, what deals were there? What were the outcomes? Like we knew which bidders dropped out, and you know, but who won the deal, and how much was it worth, and you know, what industry were these deals from? Because we weren't sort of recording the industry-based data, and some of the profile when you sign into our product, we used to just have email and name, and we're like, well, you know, which ones were lawyers, which ones were accountants and bankers, and what do CFOs care about, and what do heads of HR care about? What does private equity look at versus, you know, a corporate? Anyway, we thought we've got to structure the data, so we did that, and then it revealed some very, very, very strong patterns. One of the first things we did was, instead of like this, what I call stupid, you know, static reporting that just tells you who's logged in and what they've looked at, we had a hypothesis that people that actually buy businesses or invest money into an investment process, they must behave differently in our product than people that kick the tires and drop out and, you know, don't submit an offer. So we took that hypothesis. We got a stack of deals where we knew who the winners were. We know who the people are that drop out because they get deleted and deactivated. And we looked at 57 different, you know, characteristics around their behaviour, like how frequent they log in, what stuff they look at, do they log in on the weekend, what's the activity of their advisors versus the company that's bidding themselves, and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out we built an algorithm that can predict and tell you which bidders are engaged and which ones aren't. And it's up to 97% accurate by day 7 into a deal. So that was one thing we did. But then we were back to this bigger question of how do we help any business in the world have complete confidence in its most critical decisions it needs to make, which because we're fortunate that we've been around their biggest decision they need to make with all their most critical information. But if that was understood and presented to them earlier in their life cycle, they could acknowledge now and act on it. So that's when we build a whole new product that lets a business assess and scorecard itself against a defined outcome, like selling your business or doing an IPO, and they get a score around what you have and sort of how good it is and what you don't have, and maybe and the impact of that. It kind of just gives them that knowledge and awareness, and we've got some content around all that to tell them, look, well, here's the risks of not having this, and here's the benefits of having it today, just to create a little bit of urgency and awareness, and kind of just educate is our philosophy. Look, we'll just help educate you, and maybe you're doing some great stuff and you can get a pat on the back for that. And then the business can, you know, have a pathway that's pretty clear to improve. And one of the analogies I use is like no one in the Olympics in diving would turn up to the Olympics and not know exactly what the judges are going to be assessing their performance on. And, but in business, companies train in a way and perform in a way that when they turn up to the equivalent of the Olympics, which is, raising a lot of capital from an investor or selling, they find out that they're not aligned to what the judges look at, and they don't understand what they're going to be judged on. And as a result, they suffer, a lot. And I don't think that's right. I think people that have built their business and worked hard and done smart stuff shouldn't really be missing out on some of that value, and also incurring a lot more stress just because some of this knowledge that they find out at the end wasn't available to them in an easy, accessible way at the beginning of their business or throughout their business. So that's kind of what we built, that platform that helps the business know, be ready, act on that, do it in a way that's 10x easier than traditional processes, help advisors, like the advisory community, should offer readiness as a service. We call it RAS. The lawyers and the bankers, they don't have to maintain their transactional-based mindset and fee model. They could adopt technology like this and use that in an always-on manner to connect and add more value to business in a far more nurturable way as well. So we kind of believe it will transform the way investors and advisors and businesses, sort of work around their most critical information.
And it really is an inspirational story and an incredible journey that you've been on. And Ansarada now has big-name customers too, such as Google, JP Morgan, Deloitte, Sony, Pivotal, and so many others. So can you tell me a bit more about how you built it into this trusted advisor and tool for companies all around the world? And did you face any challenges in getting these big names on board?
Yeah, we did. And I think looking back, it's another one of those step-by-step things where I would love to say what I'm about to tell you was a deliberate strategy, but it wasn't. But it did work. In the early days, me, Daphne and Andrew just passed the hat around, and Ansarada got started with $30,000 in capital. That was it. There was no, angel investors and, cookie-cutter ABC fundraising rounds. It was just us. None of us left our jobs. And in the first phase, we just said, well, who knows general counsels and bankers and lawyers and CFOs, and we got a list together and go, well, let's go see them and see find out what their problems are and see what we should be doing. So when I met them and I interviewed them, kind of like customer discovery type stuff, they would say, well, look, you have to have this feature. You have to be able to stop people accessing that, or you have to be able to track that. It's like, okay. And then, me and Andrew would design something and he'd build something and I'd go back and show them, and they'd say, oh, listen, we don't always want that on because this process, we would want it off. So you'd have to have an on-off control there just so it's discretionary. I'm like, oh, okay, no worries, we got you. I'd go away, Andrew would fix that up. I'd go back and say, hey, we've done that. Now, what that does, and like I said, I didn't do this as a trust-building deliberate exercise, but I realised in hindsight it does build trust, is there's something about when a human says, listen, I think you should do this and here's why. And if you listen to them and then you go back and say, hey, we listened and valued what you said, we've gone and done it, and then they give you some more advice and then you listen to that and then you respond to it, that creates trust, because those early people that did that with us, about 6 months into that sort of building phase, they said, oh, hey, guys, I've got a deal coming up if you want to run it. And we said, yeah, we'll run it. And then obviously we learned a few more things and we made sure that the outcomes they wanted and the things they didn't want to happen on those deals, all worked out. And that just created more trust, and then we were able to capture some of that in a case study, and, their reputation as an advisor, they've got friends and colleagues and, people that they know, and because they knew fundamentally they could rely on us and they knew our character and we'd been through things with them, they referred us to people and said, yeah, you can trust these guys. So we borrowed the trust that other people had established in their careers and sort of leveraged that to help us establish our own trust. And then I think it's just all the millions of little interactions you have with clients, either in your product or with your service team, or kind of when something doesn't go right, how do you respond to that? Do you take shortcuts and try to line your own pockets, or do you really look at the long-term interest of the customer and take the high road and, sort of look after them? And I think if you do that enough and you do it in enough different ways, it does establish fundamental trust. And then you can amplify that trust in marketing, and you can share some of that. But that's how I think we've established that trust that, would lead a company like a Google or like, VMware, or it could be BHP or KPMG, any one of them, or Goldman Sachs. It's just that history of trust that exists. And the other stuff that helps is certifications, like to security standards and independently audited and pen tested and all that sort of stuff is just, I think some of those stuffs were optional 10 years ago, but now they're not. Now those things are like a ticket to play. And if you don't have them, you won't be trusted. So, I think you've got to have a deliberate strategy around building and establishing trust and make sure you're methodically doing it.
So are there any use cases that you can share with people listening today just to help them visualise how you're helping some of these big brands and delivering value and earning the trust with them?
Well, a lot of the bigger companies, they have corporate development teams, and they're always looking for companies to acquire that would be great for their strategy, right? So some of those companies are smaller companies, so they use our product and they create a scorecard like that, a little readiness assessment, and it lets the corporate development team send that out to a target that they are interested in potentially acquiring and say, oh, hey, have it. Go and assess yourself on here and see how you perform. And, once you chip away at this and get to a certain score, then we could do a deal. And it's sort of, well, maybe they've agreed to do a deal and they just need them to fill this out to satisfy that, the quantity and quality of information that they need. So that systemises the whole corp dev process around that targeted acquisition. That's one use. Another use could be a startup that just goes, oh, hey, I'm going to grow my business, and just as if I add staff and I take on leases and I borrow money and I do this and all that, and I start having a board and I start having board minutes and I start signing contracts, and as I'm making those decisions, those critical decisions, I'd love to have a product that could give me guidance and a pathway and an objective outcome-based score based on what actually matters, not subjective, that will just give me the confidence to act, a bit more boldly, because maybe you haven't done all that before and you don't really want to learn from your mistakes all the time. It's good to leverage something like that that's built off the experience of 25,000 other people that have gone through that. So that's a use case. Maybe you're a baby boomer and you go, you know what, I've got to think about preparing my business for exit, and I'm going to do that in the next 3 years. So I want to make sure I maximise that. I want to minimise the risk. I don't want to do a mad rush at the end. I want to methodically get on that pathway. Maybe you're an entrepreneur like me that loves your team and wants to support them, but you realise that you're probably not going to put in processes and things as much as you should. So it's a way of supporting your management team and saying, hey guys, just as we grow the business, I'm going to get us all on this platform so we can assign accountability to the different areas of the business across our team. We can all get a pathway and understand what we need to do well, and we can chip away at that. Or maybe you're an advisor running a corporate advisory business or accounting or legal, and you want to rebuild not even rebuild, you want to add on services and kind of leverage this to reinvent yourself and differentiate versus your competitors so you can connect to companies earlier in their life cycle in a much more efficient way and improve your own cost delivery. But also, add value and build trust with them incrementally so that when they do have a transaction in the future, you already have established that trust and you know their business because you've been using a platform like this to connect with them. So there's a few use cases, but there's a few more, but I don't want to take up your whole show doing a pitch.
Now, although you do work in a very serious business, you've also created the world's first M&A video game. And it seems to me that introducing the fun aspect is something that you're passionate about nurturing in the workplace too. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, the M&A game, that's something we did like a few years ago where, I don't know, I think there's all those studies where people learn their best when they're having fun and when things are at play. And we're like, how could we create a game that was engaging, but whilst you're playing it, you're actually learning a few things. And if you do the right things there, you get good outcomes. And if you do the wrong things, you get a bad score or bad things happen to you in the game. So kind of mimicking, in a loose way, the behaviour that, goes on outside of that. So it's like, it was also to be different because I get to know a lot of people that work in that corporate transaction world, and some of them are really boring, but some of them are really, really fun. And they work in a very serious environment. They work under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. And we're like, does it have to be like this? Like, why does it have to be like that? And we just wanted to put out there a different view on it. And we're always on the lookout to do more of that because I think the more engaging and exciting something is, it attracts more interest and people are more energetic. And, even that new product that we built, we put a score on it simply because once people have a score, they want to improve it. Yeah. But improving it means doing the right things. So, yeah, I think we're looking at remaking that game. We're thinking of remodeling it and building a whole new different game, and also demystifying some of the false things that exist around deal makers and lawyers and bankers and all that. We thought the game would be a good way to show a different side of the industry.
And we will have people listening at various stages of their own startup journey, and they're probably going to be hanging on a lot of the words that you've been talking about today and your story and your inspiration. So looking back, what lessons have you learned along the way that still help you today when running a 200-plus person international company?
Oh, one is what I said earlier, like you get paid for the value you bring to the marketplace. Yeah. So if you want to be more valuable, like serve more people. Literally like figure out how do you create value for them. I've learned the importance of your team and what they do and the clarity that they have on the vision and the strategy and the connection to it is just so important. And, sometimes it's easy. Let's say you make a coffee machine. Everyone not everyone, but most people drink coffee and they can relate to coffee and they can get involved in that and intimately connect. But if you're running a business like ours, where not everyone does an M&A deal, not everyone runs a business, not everyone actually understands the mechanics, everyone would understand it, what I said conceptually. Some people might intimately be involved, but a lot of the people we hire, we have to work hard to connect them to, the value and the service we're offering and how we actually are serving people. And removing that risk or helping a CFO get home at 9 o'clock at night instead of 2 a.m. and spend time with their family. And we've got to translate it into those stories. So that's important. I think reading is so important. Anytime I have a problem in the business or a challenge, I'm like, who's the best in the world at this? Have they written a book? Have they got a podcast? Have they got a blog? Let's see, what they have to say on this topic. And if they're that good, and we kind of like what they have to say there, can we get them in? Can they spend a week with us? Can they spend a few hours? Can we tap in to their 30 years of expertise in their field to sort of help us solve this? So that's something I value really, really well. The other one would be leadership, and it's like if you're going to have a company that's going to grow, guess what you're going to need more of? You're going to need more leaders. Yeah. And it's always better to promote from within. So, starting with a philosophy that leadership is influence, and you can have leaders at all levels, and leadership is influence, and making sure you're investing in your leadership culture and your leadership content and your leadership training means that you'll be creating a healthy environment to nurture and grow future leaders in your company. And so we put in place the John Maxwell Leadership Company's program and philosophy around the 5 levels of leadership, and it's a servant-based leadership model, and that's just part of our DNA now. And I think I would have done it even sooner looking back, because it's just so key to everything as you grow. Is the level of leadership you have in your company pretty much determines everything.
Fantastic advice. And if we look to the future, I mean, what's next for Ansarada? Is there anything else you can share with us?
Yeah, we got another frustration was we got all these documents, right, but everyone calls everything something different.
Yeah.
Even though it's the same thing. So we got tired of that, and we're like, we've got to use AI and ML to understand the content, to look at the content of a document and tell you by its content exactly what it is. So what we're working on now is, and launching soon, is we've been working on it for 2 years. It's just be able to look at a store of documents, and it'll just be able to label them and classify them according to exactly what they are. So be able to say, oh, that's an employment agreement, that's a lease, that's a loan facility agreement, that's a supplier contract, blah, 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 all that stuff. But, we're linking that up with everything I was talking about before, where we know what type of things you need to do an M&A deal or to raise capital or, for compliance with a process or something. So we've reverse engineered what you need, train the AI to go look for these 68 things, and what is the company using? Oh, we use Google Drive, we use Dropbox. Okay, point our tool at it or sync that stuff in. We'll analyse it. We'll find what's relevant. We'll sort it. We'll tell you what we didn't find that we should have, and then you can get to work. Now that process now usually takes weeks, and having that instantaneous diagnosis and knowledge, I believe it's going to transform things, because what happens now is people restrict what they look for in terms of information because of the cost involved to do it, and the time and stress it places on people in the business to go and look for it, and the expense of advisors as well. So that's why, instead of looking for 5 years of financials and 5 years of data and 200 possible things that you ideally would like to know and about your business and can benchmark yourself to outcomes, people don't. It gets restricted to the 70 things that are, very critical, and it gets restricted to 2 or 3 years worth of data, because there's an expense of time and effort and cost to look for more. But when that's digitised, just like photography was, or I use the analogy now, like the new Apple Watch is so good that the sensors that take your heart rate, they're so good now they can actually do the equivalent of an ECG. They can detect the cardio rhythms. Now, instead of not knowing anything for 3 years and then seeing a cardiologist to get an ECG, you can actually have that knowledge always on your wrist. It's an always-on analysis of risk and opportunity. So what we're hoping to do with this is to say, well, look, that's been democratised. It's now digitised. So there's no reason that every business in the world shouldn't have, our AI and ML analysing all their information, telling them in real time where they have risk and opportunity and how they can act on that. Yeah, and that's the second thing we're launching and building is a marketplace. So if a business doesn't have a forecast model and they learn why they should and what a good forecast and projections model looks like, and they want to get one, we want to send them to someone or send them to a piece of software that can help them act on that. So we're building a marketplace as well. So we're not just diagnosing problems in business. We're actually, helping connect them to experts and people and tools that can help them go and act on it and get it fixed up or take advantage of what they've discovered.
Well, I really appreciate it's getting probably a little bit late in Australia, so a big thank you for taking the time out to come and speak with me today. But before I do let you go, could I just ask that you remind the listeners of where they can find you online, and also maybe reach out and contact a member of your team if they've got any further questions after listening to our conversation today?
Yeah, sure, Neil. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want, guys, and just send me a message or connect up. That'd be great. But if you go to ansarada.com, on there, we've got a contact us or a form, for sales or inquiries. You can fill in one of them. Follow us on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn, whatever you prefer as well. We're always got a lot of updates there. And on our website, you can subscribe to, our blog and just keep up to date with some of the stuff I was talking about and whatever else. And we'd love to, if we can help you out, tell us how we can help you. We'd love to serve you.
Like I said at the beginning of the show, I think very often now we only hear about the success of a company and want to replicate that success. And like you've accomplished so many great things here, such as 35 million in revenue and working with the likes of Google, JP Morgan, Sony, etc. But for me, it's your backstory and how that shaped you to deliver value, to deliver trust. That is what's most valuable here, and I think it's going to be so valuable to other startup founders, other business leaders that are listening to this conversation. So a big, big thank you for being so transparent and sharing that with us today. Thank you.
Sure, Neil, and thanks for having me on. Thanks for inviting me.
What a great story. I mean, for me, this one had it all, especially triumph over adversity. I mean, the fact that Sam never attended university, even with his business acumen, and he left home at age just 17, after his family situation grew increasingly tough. I just cannot imagine what it must have been like, Sam, to find out that his father was operating under false business licence, and that story have subsequently worked into a 60 minutes expose which revealed his father as a fraud. It must have been incredibly gutting, but he got up, dusted himself down, and he refused to lie, and he's always put his integrity and trust at the forefront of his business. But on the other side, he's now got customers such as Google, JP Morgan, Deloitte, Sony and so many others. Essentially, Sam has built Ansarada into a trusted advisor and tool for companies all around the world. But how much of that was shaped by his experiences? And it does make me wonder, I think now we go out of our way to not see anything we disagree with, and any kind of challenges kind of get brushed to the side. But it's through this hardship that where the magic happens. And every single one of us will face a series of crossroads in our life, and ultimately our free will help us make the decisions. And those roads that we take will determine our fate, for better or for worse. But we can learn from our mistakes and change our direction at any time. And I absolutely love Sam's story and think there are so many life lessons in there. And I sincerely hope that everybody listening can just take a few things from it and build your own road to success too. So why not share your story with me in exactly the same way that Sam opened himself up today? And you can do that by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, or pop by my website, techblogwriter.co.uk/podcast, and you can see today's and so many other episodes. In fact, 700 of them. So a big thank you to the Nostradamus Effect for his brutally honest feedback. I will try and ensure it doesn't happen again. And a big thank you to each and every one of you for joining me again today. So have an amazing day wherever you are. Thanks for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.